Episode 2 of me talking online. Last video was about Bitcoin. This one's probably going to be about Bitcoin. I was going to answer some questions. BC Assassin, Brandon Crisp, asks, how are Bitcoins produced or minted? And when will it stabilize enough to be an attractive currency rather than a risky investment? Don't know the future, BC. But how are Bitcoins produced? Bitcoins, every 10 minutes, there are 25 new Bitcoins. And that will happen in a similar way to that up until the year about 2040, or until there are 21 million Bitcoins. There is a hard cap. There will not be more than 21 million Bitcoins ever. How they're produced is, well, again, all Bitcoin is it's like software, computer software. It's a formula. So every 10 minutes, when all the transactions that occurred in the last 10 minutes are what's called confirmed into the next block on the blockchain, which again, the blockchain is the list of all the transactions that have ever occurred in the Bitcoin network. So I think there's been 280,000 blocks since the Bitcoin network started. So now we're going to get into mining, because that's how the transactions are confirmed. So mining is when people use their computer, their processing power, to try to solve a really complex math problem, and the first person to do it confirms the next block that basically gets put onto the blockchain. There's a whole bunch of people trying to do this, so it's very difficult, and you have to actually get lucky. I mean, even if you have, you could have 25%. You could literally be the United States government and put every single supercomputer, every computer that you have to mine Bitcoin, and you would still probably only have like 5% of the total mining power, and you would, or the total computing power, I should say. Computing power / mining power are interchangeable. They might mine a block here or there, but they could never mine enough to make a real difference. So point being, when you mine a block, when you confirm all the transactions that happen in the last 10 minutes by solving this problem, you are given 25 new Bitcoins. So fresh, brand new Bitcoins. They're yours. You're also given what are called the mining fees. Now, to send a Bitcoin transaction is free. It costs nothing. Well, other than electricity your computer runs on, and the energy of pushing on your keyboard, it's completely free. But you can add a little payment to it, so that the miners, the people who are doing the complex math, have more of an incentive to include your transaction sooner. Because it is possible that you could do a transaction, and if you don't attach a tiny little fee to it, which right now the going rate is like 10 cents, again, regardless of whether you send $10 or $10 million. And if you don't care, if it doesn't matter that your transaction shows up immediately, then you don't have to put a fee on it. It doesn't matter. But if you want it to almost certainly be included in that next block, so that you have confirmation in 10 minutes that your transaction went through, then you put this little extra amount of Bitcoin in there, and then the person that confirms those transactions gets that too. So generally, depending on how many transactions there were in a certain 10-minute period, they'll get 25 Bitcoins plus like another 1.5 Bitcoins or something, which is all the little, 1/1000th of a Bitcoin added up for all the transactions. So that's how Bitcoins are produced. Now, that's probably difficult to understand. It's difficult for me to understand because it's complicated. That's why it just got invented recently. Anyway, moving on. When and how will it stabilize enough to be an attractive currency rather than a risky investment? That's a good question, to which there is really not a good answer, but I'll still give one, or an answer, probably not a good one. When will it stabilize? It probably won't. I mean, it all depends on what you mean by stable. Right now, Bitcoin, the market cap of Bitcoin, or the total value of all the Bitcoins that are in existence, if you added their values up, is about, I think it's like $10 billion. Maybe it's only like $9 billion right now. Whereas the market cap of all the dollars in existence is like, well, M1 dollars, which is like cash and stuff like that. Not necessarily every savings account or derivatives or whatever. Is about $1 trillion. So 10 billion, a trillion, I mean, it's like way more money. As Bitcoin gets adopted, its value has to go up. So as more and more people start using it, its value will rise. Now, like anything that's new, we don't know how to value something that's new. You know, like we know how to value things that we use all the time, where we know kind of the costs that go into making them, we know how much we want them, we know how useful they are. We don't know any of those things about Bitcoin. Now we're learning it more and more, but it's important to remember that all economic value is subjective. There is no such thing as something that just has objective value. Everything has economic value because some human being wants it, and that's inherently subjective. There's some things that, like a Coach purse, or I don't even know if those are cool anymore, but people value those a lot. So there's no reason why a piece of fabric that has freaking C's stapled all over it should be worth $500. But it is, because that's what people are willing to pay for it. And that is how you find out how much things are worth. There is no index somewhere of this is how much value this thing has. Those are all subjective valuations placed on inanimate objects by human beings. So a Bitcoin is worth right now, in fact, let's check. It is a little bit volatile, so who knows what it's at. Go to zeroblock.com, that's the place to be. Right now, on Coinbase, where I bought mine, Bitcoins are trading at $628. So right now, Bitcoin is worth $628. What will it be worth in a year? I don't know. It will be worth what people are willing to pay for it. So as adoption goes up, the price of a Bitcoin will go up. When will it stabilize? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I don't want Bitcoins to stabilize right now, because a currency that's only worth $10 billion total, I mean, that's like smaller than freaking Slovakia's currency or something. I don't, they're probably in the Europe. Some tiny country, basically. I think, in fact, I can find that too. Right now, Bitcoin is the 86th biggest currency in the world. Now, considering Bitcoin is the first international currency, the first currency that's not controlled by a government, the first currency that is basically social, I don't even want to say social in nature, it is the first open source currency. There is no one that has the control to manipulate that currency. There's no one that has the control to just make new Bitcoins out of thin air. It all follows the system. And so when you choose to use Bitcoins, you choose to follow the rules of the system. And the system is set up in such a way that you cannot do anything other than follow the rules. That's why there's all this cryptography and all this stuff, because people will always try to do something other than follow the rules. They will always try to steal. They will try to get what they can. And with Bitcoin, you can't do that. Now, this is a tangent, but that being said, your Bitcoins can be stolen. Now, they can't be stolen because someone hacks Bitcoin or something, but they can be stolen because your computer, your operating system that you're using, whether it be Apple, Windows, Linux, it's probably less likely, Ubuntu, doesn't matter, can be compromised. I mean, someone could install a keylogger so that when you type in your Bitcoin private key, your cryptographic password, they could just read it because they've compromised your computer. Now, they haven't compromised Bitcoin, but because they've compromised your computer, they could steal your Bitcoins. Same thing goes with any of the kind of technology you use. So that being said, that would have to be an incredibly sophisticated attack, and there's ways around it. Like, in order for me to send Bitcoins, I have to put in a password, which is super long, and I get a text message with another code that I have to put in. And that code changes every 30 seconds, and it's specifically texted to me and to no one else. So if you wanted to hack into my Bitcoin account and steal my Bitcoins, you not only would have to steal my password, you'd have to steal my phone. And that's easier said than done. Okay, moving along. Another question, BCS, another good question. When Bitcoin is produced, whose wallet does it go into, and how much Bitcoin is currently in circulation? Well, I kind of answered that. It goes into the wallet of the person that confirmed the latest block, that mined the last block of all the transactions that occurred in approximately 10 minutes. It goes into their wallet. Now, what was the second half of that question? How many Bitcoins are currently in circulation? There will be 21 million total. Right now, there are 12.38 million Bitcoins in circulation. So a little bit over half of the 21 million are in circulation right now. Now, because when Bitcoin first started, it was basically worth jack shit. There's a lot of people that lost a lot of Bitcoins. That basically, back in 2010 when Bitcoins were worth like a penny, they, mined on their computer with their laptop and they got like a couple hundred Bitcoins. Well then, they got a new laptop. They didn't really follow up on it, and they just, there's a guy in the UK that literally threw away like $7 million worth of Bitcoins. There's people, there were people a month ago walking around in a landfill trying to find this hard drive of this guy that has $7 million worth of Bitcoins on it. But if you lose them, they are gone. There is no, you cannot appeal to someone to get them back. They're gone. They're like cash. If you lose it, it is gone. Gone. So yeah, 12.38 million are currently in supply. More questions. Ryan Pancoke asks, when do they anticipate this becoming more widely used? Any chance this could become the world currency? It's hard to see everyone agreeing on something like this and it not lining someone's pockets. It will line a lot of, it has already, there's a lot of Bitcoin millionaires, people that got in early, and there's a guy in Norway that was studying, he was like doing his PhD in cryptography. He, like 2009, like right after it started, he read about it because he was, on the mailing list, and he spent, I think, $27 on Bitcoin. And when he realized it, like 5 years later, when he heard in the news the price going up, he found that Bitcoin and it was worth $1 million. So there's a lot of people who were in at the beginning that are Bitcoin millionaires, as they say. So yeah, there are people getting rich. And he says, let's go back. When do you anticipate this becoming more widely used? They say necessity is the mother of invention. And because in America, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means if you want to do international trade, you do almost all of that in dollars. So that's why Saudi Arabia is our good friend, because Saudi Arabia makes sure that you buy oil in dollars. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter if you're from China, India, wherever, you buy oil in dollars. So everyone has to hold dollars if they want to buy oil. Because they have to hold dollars to buy oil, that means that the value of those dollars is higher. If they couldn't buy as much stuff, or if they didn't have to be used to buy oil and to do a lot of international trade, then they wouldn't be as valuable as they are. So my point is, in America, we don't need Bitcoin as much as a lot of the world. Argentina right now has like 30% inflation. They're just printing out money. They're making it illegal to transfer your money out of the country. There's people buying cars and driving them out of the country or shipping them to America just to sell, to try to get their money out of Argentine pesos and into dollars, because their currency is that garbage. It is terrible. And that's because the government is destroying the currency. Money is just a means of exchange. It is something that everyone else accepts and trades other things for value. And it used to be that gold and silver and precious metals and things like that, and then different places in the world, beads or rocks or whatever, something that people valued, that they could exchange for other things. Now, the reason it usually was gold was kind of the gold standard, that's what the best money was, is because gold is relatively rare. it is hard to get more of it. I mean, you have to dig it out of the ground. I mean, they're saying maybe they're going to be mining it off asteroids in the future. Who knows? But throughout all of human history, it has been hard to get gold. It is laborious, time-consuming. So it's rare, it's hard to get, and it is almost infinitely divisible. You can take a bar of gold or a gold coin and you can hack it into like 1,000 pieces, and they're all still the same thing as the original. It doesn't lose any of its inherent characteristics because you make it smaller. Now, one of the problems with gold and metals, I mean, they're heavy. You don't want to tote them around and try to spend money with them. So that's how paper money came about, is you'd basically leave your gold in the bank, and you would get a bank note that said, this note is redeemable for this much gold. And that's what the dollar was. A dollar was just defined as 1/20th of an ounce of gold. So if you owned a dollar, what you really owned was a promise from the bank that if you brought that note in, they would give you 1/20th of an ounce of gold. Then, of course, over time, as with any government-controlled money, from throughout all of history, this always happens. It is much less painful for the government to just create new money, to print up new dollars, than it is to try to get that money out of people in taxes. So it is much easier for them to just print out new money and spend that new money than it is to try to raise taxes to get more money to spend. So, like let's say the Iraq War. It costs a lot of money, but we didn't pay for it. I mean, we'll be paying for it in the future because they're printing money, they're borrowing money to pay for that down the road. They didn't just raise tax. I mean, if you'd got a bill for 20 grand every year that we were, overseas fighting a war, they. If you'd got a bill for that, you would have been a lot less excited, I imagine, about the prospects if you were paying $20,000 a year specifically for that. The basic point is it's just easier. It's easier to print new money. But printing new money doesn't make anyone richer. It makes everyone feel richer for a little while, but there's still the same amount of stuff. The only purpose of money is that it gets other stuff. You can trade it to people for their things, products, services, things that are actually worth something. I mean, right now, because they printed up so much money in Zimbabwe, money, their dollars, their 10 trillion Zimbabwe dollars, are literally worth less than goat shit, because goat shit burns better. That is how worthless their money is, because they're printing up so much money. The same thing happened in Germany before World War II. Had a huge part to play in why Hitler came to power, because they kept printing up money and they just destroyed the value of their currency. That's why Germany right now is not super excited about loaning all their money out to France and Spain and Italy and Greece, because they've seen what happens when you print out money. So, I don't even remember what I was talking about. I was answering Ryan Pancoke's question, which was, when do I anticipate it becoming more widely used? What I was getting at there is that there are places in the world that I think Bitcoin will actually be adopted much faster than here, because it is more needed. The beauty of Bitcoin is that because it runs on a formula, I mean, that's what it is. It's an invention, a technology, a formula, a program. It cannot be manipulated by the government. So, especially in these countries where the government is just in the process of destroying the currency and people are trying to get out of that currency and into something else, I think a lot of them will go to Bitcoin because it can't be tampered with. I mean, it's relatively volatile right now because it's still being adopted really quickly. No one is for sure what's going to happen in the future. I mean, there's all these spin-offs of other ideas related to that. But that being said, they know that it's not going to be printed into oblivion, that the government can't just, by edict say, oh, now there's 10 million new Bitcoins. No, it can't happen. So in places like, again, Zimbabwe, now, granted, because of Bitcoin's technology, it will be harder to adopt in places where there is not nearly as much of a technological infrastructure like there is here. I mean, we all have smartphones, computers. It's a piece of cake to download the app, boom, put in your password, you've got Bitcoins. I don't know a whole lot about Zimbabwe, but I imagine that not everyone has an iPhone, considering they're literally burning their money to stay alive. They're probably not, most of them probably don't have the latest Apple product. But that being said, there's a lot of ways right now, there's a lot of services being built where you can just send Bitcoin with a text message or something else, because almost everyone now has a mobile phone. And so I think it will be adopted in these places because they just need it more. And I mean, they can get it there, they can send it to America, they can send it literally anywhere in the world for free, and it allows them to interact economically with the world, not just with their village or, you know, their country or anything. I mean, they can interact anywhere in the world with Bitcoin from the middle of nowhere, just using a cell phone. So I think that it's going to happen mostly in countries where the money is being destroyed. It says any chance it could become a world currency. Could it become the world currency? Well, yeah, I don't think. I mean, I personally think in the future there'll be many kind of different currencies. I mean, like there are now. I mean, there's hundreds of currencies in the world now. Almost all of them are controlled by governments. And that's not because governments are inherently good at controlling money. It's because governments have all the guns, and they make it illegal for you to start your own currency. Several people have tried it before in America, but they are now, you know, rotting in prison because they got caught. I mean, basically they're competing, and you are not allowed to compete with a monopoly. That's the point of a monopoly. Let's sidetrack again. Monopolies. Right now, the U.S. dollar has a monopoly in the United States. It is the only thing that is considered legal tender. Any time that it is illegal to compete with someone, that is where you absolutely know for 100% certainty that you are getting screwed. If it was illegal to compete with Apple and we could all only buy Apple iPhones, we would all know that we're getting screwed. I mean, now, granted, Apple makes great phones, so that's a kind of a bad analogy, but you know you're getting screwed because you can't buy anything else. And when you have a monopoly, then you can charge a much higher price and give a much inferior product. Because if anyone tries to offer something better, they go to prison. So that is the case right now with the American dollar. You can't just start up another currency because the dollar is in bad shape. You will go to prison. Now, the guy that started Bitcoin, or the guys or people, they did it under a fake name, I think pretty much specifically for this reason. Now, Bitcoin is an international currency. But, I mean, to pretend like that's going to stop the U.S. government from throwing you in prison is absurd. They would do it. So that being said, monopolies are bad. And the only real way that you can get and sustain a monopoly is if you have it granted to you by the government. The government says, okay, you're the only person that we're going to allow to do this, and if someone else tries to compete with you, we're going to, you know, whatever, arrest them, fine them, you know, go government on them. So that's what it is with the dollar. The reason I think that Bitcoin could overtake the dollar is because it is not controlled by a central authority, and therefore it cannot be manipulated, and just they can't screw you like they do with the dollar. I mean, the dollar has lost 95% of its value since 1913. Now, luckily, we have technological innovation. I mean, we're actually getting richer because technological innovation and productivity in the economy are going up faster than our currency is going down. But if our technological innovation slows down or our productivity slows down, we're all going to start getting poorer because our currency is constantly being stolen from us by the state and the cronies connected to the state, which would be the Goldman Sachs of the world, the military-industrial complex. Basically, whoever is the first person to touch that money when it's printed is getting the benefit of it. So that is that. I do think that Bitcoin could become a world currency, like a big world currency. I don't know for sure if it's going to happen. Could be some other thing. I have no idea. Let's see if there's any. See if there's any other good questions. Oh, someone says, what about the apparent glitch in the Bitcoin code that has allowed hacks like the recent Silk Road mess? So if you don't know, Silk Road was a website where... not even talk about Silk Road. Recently, one of the first and one of the biggest Bitcoin exchanges stopped trading Bitcoins or allowing people to trade Bitcoins on their website or on their infrastructure because they had screwed up their code so that people could essentially basically rob them. Now, they didn't actually like steal the Bitcoins, and it's not a problem with Bitcoin, but they would trick the exchange into thinking that they hadn't that the exchange hadn't paid them their Bitcoins, and so the exchange would pay them their Bitcoins again. And so they would basically just get double the amount of Bitcoins from this exchange because they had bad code and they were screwing things up. So it's not about a glitch in Bitcoin, it's about a glitch in this exchange called MTGOX, which is basically garbage, and I wouldn't bother going there. I would use Coinbase, not MTGOX. Trying to think if there was any other questions. I felt like I did have some good questions. Let me just pull up my doc. I'm organized now. Super organized. Tons of good questions everywhere. Yeah, I know I had some other good questions. I'll tell you what. I'm going to call it right there. So this is the part 2 of Luke talking to the computer. Let me know if you like it, if you have any suggestions, anything else that you would like me to chat about. I'd be happy to.